Okay, we're gonna get started. We do not have a quorum in the room yet. Um, hopefully one more member will show up shortly. So for quorum check, we'll do that. Public comment period for things not on the agenda. There's no one here from the public.
I
Okay,
don't,
Dan?
yeah, for a car. Wow, that's not. I think it's getting.
So I don't think there's any comments for anything not on the agenda. We're gonna, I'm sorry, but we're gonna skip the Snyder Hill project for a second. Because we can talk about some other things. Planning board training and training budget discussion. Chris, this was your item that you wanted to bring up. And I think really it was about what is the budget? How do we decide who goes to training and how it's spent? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, just the way that the whole conference kind of stuff went this year, it was, just wanted to bring it up to the board's attention that do we want to ask for an increase in the current budget for training? And if so, do we want to allocate a certain amount per person, or is there a specific amount of people that we want going to the big training every year? If it's like 3 or 4, or for only, just to make it more clear on who can go to what are the bigger events, or if it's more like training that needs to be done, if we need to focus more locally in certain years, or what other members' thoughts around that were.
What's the current budget for training?
1,500. And so just a little bit of history, it was, 500 and then 1,000, and then I think 1,500 started maybe 3 or 4 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago. I think it's great that we expended it all. I mean, that's super. It's usually not expended, so that's the reason why we haven't really.
Yeah, this year was unusual
Yeah.
because there were.
The people interested in going to the annual conference, that's a lot of time to devote.
Conference than what.
Is that a hard cap?
Well, it's just, I try and put a legitimate number that I think is gonna be. Cover things.
If we wanted to do 2,000, would that have been impossible?
Yeah. I don't think so, but that's the town board decision each year.
We have a quorum, yay.
We're always concerned about, we're always concerned about the non-incremental changes in the budget. Budgets are supposed to be incremental by nature. So that seems like a big increase.
So that would have been a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The matter we've been running at 1,500,
And I guess
2,000 for next year would give us a little more leeway. And
Yeah, just make the case, I guess, to the board, what you would do with the extra, for the additional funding.
Well, I thought the conference was really good. I mean, I could see sending, we have 7 members. The question is, how many do we want to, we're probably not going to send the entire board to the conference every year, right? That would be probably not a good use of funds. Right? But
yeah, I consider training always a good use of funds.
I agree. But I guess we could try for 2,000. I mean, what is it? What did we determine it costs to go to that conference
It was $689 per
person?
Yep.
And we didn't, of the people that went, we didn't reimburse everybody because full amounts because we
Right.
Didn't have it.
Budget.
That's an expensive conference.
It is.
Maybe not. I mean, even when we go to AOT meetings, which is our big thing,
Mhm.
it's usually about $200, $300. So. And
Well, it was total in, I mean, it was $250 registration, but then it was the hotel and transportation. Yeah.
for an individual.
Yeah.
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 And you're suggesting the entire board?
No.
No, just having the allocation go up from the 1,500 that's been at 2,000,
Right.
just to allow more people to take that opportunity.
But how many are we talking about going at once?
Personally, I was thinking something in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 max for each year because like I said, I don't think we want to fund everyone going.
I mean, we try to keep it to 3
Yeah.
to AOT, because that's our big expense in
Mhm.
terms of travel. Laying up. But training's important. I don't wanna, say training's not important, but I just think if you could maybe
And so we had.
come in halfway, or something like this year, make sure it's covered.
Yeah, we had 4 go this year.
Mhm.
So, you know, next year, we should prioritize. The 4 that, or the 3 that didn't go this year, if they want to.
Yeah, just the way kind of the whole thing went.
Yeah.
Just with kind of it being unclear of like who can go and who can't go and like what expenditure per person was realized, so. Just looking for clarity, like, do we need to up the amount or do we need to specify of like who goes when or? Especially for the big one, at least, but that brings up like, well, what if there's smaller local ones? Like let's say if I don't go to the big conference. Can I go to like when they have like one in Elmira or wherever they have the day long ones?
Well, and a lot of those don't, if you're members, which we are. They don't charge for them, right? Like a lot.
Well, the half-day trainings that typically AOT and NYPF put on are $80 for the half-day.
Over the charge.
So what if you try to allocate 3 members going a year and 6? Well, you got to remember we're a group of 9 when you put the alternates in there. So then do 6 for day training, and
Yeah.
put that number in there. So like 700 times 3 plus 6 times 80. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. See what that number comes out to.
And then you could rotate out 3 every 3 years. You get to go to the big conference.
So it is. 600. That's more than 2,000 because it's 1,800 just for the conference and then 480 for the other. So.
Yeah.
That would be. Just over 2,000. So I think if we push for 2,000, I think that
Mhm.
gets us really.
Well, but you got justification for
Yeah.
for that other number you got, right?
Number, right.
Mhm.
Because not
You
everybody.
don't ask, you don't get, you know?
Yep. Right. I agree with that. I'm fine with that. So yes, we'd like to do that.
Okay,
I think is what I'm hearing, right? From our,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable.
okay. I think we're done with that topic, which means
Thank you.
we can move on to 846, 848 Snyder Hill Road. This is a public hearing. I'm going to start the public hearing at 6:12 p.m. This is a public hearing for final plat approval of a subdivision at 640 or 846, 848 Snyder Hill Road. Anything else you want to say about it?
nope, this third month we've seen it. Between first and second month, there was a little change in the plat of showing the septic system. Between the preliminary plat and final, there's 0 changes, so.
Which we had asked for, right, to show the
The septic, yeah.
Yeah. And we have it up on the screen. At the
Oh,
moment.
and the ZBA granted the variance, that's.
Oh, right. And it did go to ZBA and ZBA did grant the variance.
Yeah.
I'll bet you were happy about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was the vote?
Well.
Unanimous.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions on this final subdivision plat? We've looked at this thing multiple times.
Yeah, not for me. I'm good with it.
I'm good with it too. Any other comments?
I've made a fuss about this at the last meeting. It sort of incrementally brought something that had all at once. I don't think it would have gotten approved, as one action, so I voted against it. Mainly as a matter of principle. In this case, the place is built, it's probably occupied or shortly will be. But as I've been working on the zoning stuff over the past year and a half, I've found many cases where I think for whatever reason, the planning board has made decisions that probably if we thought them through all the way and really understood what the development patterns are, here to drive, we might have done something differently. So I've been thinking a lot about that. Over the last month, I've been thinking about this one, when this was here for the original application to put the building. I think we sort of implied that if there was a future subdivision request, that we would be okay with that. So I'm not gonna block this, but I did want to, at the
Yep.
last meeting, make a statement that, you know, my thoughts about things like this have changed over the last year and a half. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay. All right, so we need to do a resolution, right, to approve?
Yep.
So I would like to move that we approve the final plat. Is there a date on this plat?
It's just it's the original was 10/10 of 24, but it just has in the revision list, 6/23 was the updated survey reference, approved variance and the change of the preliminary to final.
So as revised on 6/23,
Yep.
25?
Yep.
Okay. So I move that we approve the final plat for 846, 848 Snyder Hill Road, based on the 6/23 revisions. The fact that the ZBA approved, the zoning board approved the variance. I think that's it. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Chris seconds. Any other discussion? No. All in favor?
I,
It's unanimous, okay. All right,
And did you do the quorum check for benefit of Joy minutes? And so you can see that Brad and Craig are on the call, but in the room is,
so for that, yes, we have in the room is myself. Bill Griffin, Chris, Frank is absent. John is here, on Zoom is Brad and Craig. So Tony, Bill, Chris, and John are in the room. Which gives us the quorum.
Sign up, I'll keep one to put the date and signature right there.
Today's date is 26. I gotta sign every one of them, right? How many copies are there?
there are 5 there.
They asked me if I wanted more.
Yeah,
I said, that's not me.
well, I'm sorry,
I saved you a little bit of
this saves us trying to get together later to sign, so. Ah. One more.
You need one of those robo signers.
Yeah. What do they call it? Auto pen or something?
Auto pen, sorry, yeah.
Auto pen. Thank you. All right, you're all set.
All right.
So I will close the public hearing at 6:18. There was no one from the public available, so we will close the public hearing. Good luck, man. All right, so that's that. So let's move on to zoning rewrite. General updates, I don't think there's a whole lot, right? This has been, it went through the town board. Do you wanna talk about that at all, or? And actually probably should do this a little bit.
There really wasn't a whole lot of discussion at the town board. I think the scope that the planning board recommended and the SAG also thought was reasonable, and we included the edits that occurred during the ZAG processes, and the town board accepted it. They sent it along to Nan to get to work. One thing we did specify, the board suggested that she work on the data center piece first because of the moratorium and to,
Right.
keep the momentum going on that. But yeah, so Nan's off writing zoning language, and as she submits packages back to us, we'll be reviewing them, the planning board, and then through the ZAG process, and then of course the town board. So we're off to the races on phase one.
Right. So I think we can start sort of working on the scope for phase two. But as I said in my email, I propose that we skip the July 3rd, and I think John talked about that as well. Does anyone have any objections to skipping the July 3rd ZAG meeting? Just taking a month off. It's the night before a long weekend, holiday weekend, and I'm afraid we might not be able to get a quorum and all of that, so.
Folks okay with that?
All right, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think where we are on the project, we're waiting for Nan, and then starting in August, if we'll see what she has, and if she doesn't have much, we can start working on the scope for phase two.
Yep, and as far as the scope for phase two, in the scope summary for phase one that I
Mhm.
prepared for the town board, I also included some ideas for phase two scope.
Right.
And I wanted to say that for phase one, there were some substantial sort of homework assignments. One of them was to develop criteria for battery storage,
Mhm.
and the other one, of course, the criteria for the data centers. There's homework for the phase two scope, depending, of course, on what we put in, and some examples are that originally we had work in chapter 240 subdivisions in phase one and then pulled it out. I suggested we pulled it out because there were some complicated pieces in there. An example is that Nan recommends that we pull the residential and commercial design guidelines into zoning.
Right.
Well, before we do that, I think they need to be reviewed. And
Absolutely.
they're chunky documents.
Yeah,
That's not a small thing.
Yeah.
Another example is the original phase one scope had density controls in place, recommended that instead of lot size controls. And I just picked for the heck of it, I think one lot per 3 acres or 3 acres, but I can't remember which one.
Mhm.
But it occurred to me that was just a number out of thin air, and there was no rationale behind that at all. And Nan talked to me briefly about doing things like build out analysis on different density numbers just to see what it looks like. And I got to thinking, we don't even know what our current density is.
Right.
And how that's developed over time. So there's a big data analysis piece, I think, that needs to happen before we would be able to talk with any rationale about what the number would be for density. So there's a number of things like that would need to happen. That would be, I think, a lot of our work to do before we would be able to put a phase two recommendation in place like we did for phase one. So to that end, I can bring this phase two, beginning scope outline to the meeting next month. And we can begin to understand, well, which of these pieces do we think we can do? And how are we going to do these homework pieces so that we can get started on it? So I'd be happy to bring that forward next month.
Following our normal schedule, that meeting would be August 7th. Because that's the first Thursday in August.
Well, we'd be looking at it in the July planning board meeting though, right?
In the July.
To-
We could look at it in the.
To kind of give the guidance to the,
Yeah, we could,
Like what was
we could
gonna
look
be
at it in the
phase
July
two.
planning board. meeting.
But that's.
and then we can get off.
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
meeting.
okay, yep, we can do that.
And then the only other thing is, in the original project plan, I had put an outline for a communication plan in place that once we had an idea of what was in the phase one scope, that we would work to bring the general public up to speed on what we're doing. We really haven't done much of that. We pulled the ZAG in, which I thought was important. But when we did the comprehensive plan, we had lots of meetings with community groups seeking their input. And I guess I'd throw that on the table. Is that an appropriate thing for us to start doing now? So that the public can't say at some point, where have you been? You know, you haven't
Well,
done
but
it.
shouldn't we have some kind of zoning code for them to look at?
Not necessarily. I think just, you know, as it talks about in the summary that I prepared for the town board, that pretty much says the things that we're intending to do. And when I put together the outline for the communication plan, the zoning piece was part of it, but really it was a general education of the groups that we would talk to, where we would talk about the comprehensive planning process and what it means and what current zoning says. You know, a lot of folks really don't have any idea and don't get involved with that until they hear something that bothers them, like what happened in Caroline. So, I'm not convinced that we need to do one thing or another, but it feels to me like this is the type of thing that if you don't try and get out in front of it with community groups, that you risk they come back and bite you. So I welcome other people's thoughts on that.
Do we have the website space set up for this? That it was originally gonna be planned? So there's idea to put a little sub-page somewhere on the
Yeah.
town website.
There is it. Cassie has set up a page, a landing page for all the documents, and
Okay.
there's some introductory language that's been drafted. I don't know if that's already pushed to the website or not.
Probably should push the document you're talking about there too, so we can direct them there. If that makes sense.
Right, but I think to John's point, what he's saying is we need to sort of start somehow getting the message out, just putting it on our
Oh,
website.
okay.
Not a lot of people go to our website and just look for things, right? So I think we need to start. Yes, I think we need a landing page to point them to, or a place to point them to. Absolutely, we need to get that in place. But I think what John's really talking about is somehow reaching out to various groups to say, hey, we're doing this.
Okay.
Do you want to know what we're doing? Right? Is that what we're getting?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So, okay. Which, you know, and the other thing is doing things like this over the summer is really hard to get public attention on things over the summer generally. So I think, you know, starting that in like August or so might be reasonable because, you know, people will be starting to come back to school and all that kind of stuff.
And a thing I would add is, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be a town board function to put this in place.
Correct.
And so to some degree, Dan, I would ask your guidance, you know, how important do you think it is to give folks a heads up that we're doing this?
Well, I think not having anything to show, just saying that we're engaged in a zoning rewrite will create a lot of input or potentially create input on a process that isn't really explicit at this point. We don't have anything
Right.
to show. So we may have people come and say, don't do this, don't do that, whatever you do.
And we weren't planning on doing that anyway.
Yeah, and so I think it might create,
Well, I think the document John has actually starts with that because it really talks a lot about the scope of this phase one, right? But yeah.
so John, are you thinking members of this committee visiting, say like Rotary? I don't know why that pops up.
Why would that pop in here?
But you know, historical society or whatever, the library.
You know, yes, and we do have the underlying principles that are driving the zoning update. They are things like removing regulatory burdens for things that we want to have happen. Making it less burdensome for developers and owners to put diverse residential projects in place, making sure that our zoning language is succinct and serves a purpose. So those are the underlying principles for what we're doing. And we know those things. That's why we hired Nan. That's what her proposal is based on. And those are the types of things that we can share with the community.
Yeah, I guess in my experience is that the people that will probably be most critical of this process are not people that are engaged very much in day-to-day civic life. And that's what worries me. I mean, we may get out and get nothing but thumbs up from, I don't know, say like the business community or the ag group. But somebody will say, you know, later in the process, well, no one reached out to me, you reached out to these groups. You know, I'm not saying it's not worthwhile doing, and I'm sure some folks would be very interested to know that we're doing this.
Well, how does this sound, Dan? Maybe you could discuss this with the other town board members and. You know, see, maybe the consensus on your part, and again, this is gonna end up in your lap. Is that we just should forge ahead and not have a specific program to reach out right now and to wait until we have. Written documents
Sounds
that,
a more concrete step in the process to
Yeah.
say, this is what we're doing. Because. That's when I think the net will get spread a little wider, you know, be newsworthy. Where
Mhm.
some reporters might wanna cover it. Town, you know, town gives update on unfolding process is not such a hook as town presents first draft of. Language revisions for the,
right?
Zoning revisions, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
you know, I share your same concern about, you know. Not springing things on the community,
Right,
and having an outcome like we had in our neighboring town.
but we are engaging all of the, we are engaging all of those advisory boards, which would
Yeah.
include the ag and conservation board and those and hopefully they are. Representing their various areas, but no matter what we do, there's gonna be some group of people that say, you didn't tell me. Right, so, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a sort of mini version
Yeah,
of that, and it would be for us to develop what I would call talking points.
Yeah,
And that we could share those with the advisory board members too, and say, you know, if you want to talk to people about this, or if people ask you about this. Here's some talking
here's
points.
some talking points, here's what we're doing, get it out there, right? Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And I'd like to throw this out that maybe we ask Nan in her experience, when are the vital steps to
Right.
start, you know, communicating to the public? In terms of a communication plan, you know, what should we be developing? If she says, get something out now, then we're gonna listen to her.
Yeah.
Well, I talked to her a little bit about that, and she encouraged us to exercise caution. And
Sounds like a plan.
and then she shared a couple of, you know, unfortunate events in her career that have happened because of, I guess I would say. I don't know if I would call them errors in the communication plan, but she said it's early in the process, so be careful what you say to people.
Yeah, cause I'm afraid people would come out and say, well, you're not telling us anything, and you know, I'm concerned about this, and you don't have an answer.
Right.
What do you guys think you're doing? It would be that whole
Yeah,
thing.
I hear you.
Where we're saying it's early in the process.
Yeah.
and just letting you know,
Okay.
then they'll define it for us.
Yeah,
Not
and that's probably not what we want.
to get too political.
Yeah. All right. So all set on general updates and all that?
If I could just add one other thing, maybe somebody's tracking this closer than I am, but as I understand it, the best process in New York State is going through a code revision that's taking place over the summer. And then a couple key dates, like June 27th and July 26th, that this New York State code process is looking at. In
Yeah,
terms of-
Dan, I was gonna talk about that next.
Okay.
Yeah, so I went to a Best
you.
NYSERDA seminar, webinar, I don't know, a week or two back. Gene, it was the one that you gave us a heads up about. And, you know, I always tend to be cynical going into these NYSERDA things, and they didn't disappoint me. You know, for example, they made changes to the best guideline book, Ray, that they discussed 4 or 5 years ago. But didn't say what the changes were. They just said, we've updated it. And I was a little disappointed about that. BESS in New York State is behind the 3 gigawatt goal that was supposed to be in place this year. And they said that, you know, there was something like 475 megawatts in place, but didn't say why the goal was missed or what we might be thinking about to encourage the goal to get met. There was nothing there. It was crickets. Instead, it was sort of the same old stuff that we think this is a safe technology and da 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 da. And I finally asked the question if the Office of Renewable Energy Siting might be taking over the site approval of this, to scooch it along. And, all of a sudden my Zoom link got shut off, so I never heard the answer. Dan, to answer your question, I did learn in the, webinar that the fire safety working group recommendations that are supposed to show up in the New York State Fire Code are supposed to show up in a January update. So there's apparently a date set for when we're gonna see them,
26.
26. But again, they didn't share what they thought might be in that, you know, which parts of the fire safety working group, recommendations would be included in the update. There was nothing about that.
Or does that mean that any sort of revision or provisions that we put into our zoning law needs to wait on that?
Well, what I was thinking that instead of waiting, which would be an option, we could just wait, would be to say that the site review process will include the following elements and then include all of the items from the fire safety working group recommendation. So for example, one of the recommendations is that there needed to be a emergency response group in place that would respond, I think they said within 15 minutes and be on 4 hours. That our code should say that, you know, part of the process will be to review the emergency response process, which the fire safety working group said recommended, and it wouldn't say anything more about that, but it would make it clear that that's something that the developer needs to come and talk to us about. And frankly, when I read through the recommendations from the fire safety working group, they make sense.
Yeah.
I thought that group did a good job.
So you're thinking regardless of what the final rule is,
Whether it becomes legislation or not, we want to hear what our developer is doing to meet the spirit of that language.
right?
And so we can say that, and it doesn't matter whether it becomes legislated or not.
This is a state rulemaking process, right, that they're engaged in, like.
Yes, which is a mystery to me.
Yeah, so I don't think it's the legislation, but then they'll have the final rule from what I'm gaining in January 26th. Yes.
What the sort of person said was to be included in the state fire code, which the town enforces.
And we're not, unlike data centers, we're not really on a deadline for this, so we could withhold final approval of keys until after those things come out.
You know, the only thing I don't know, and we're gonna learn about this, is how difficult a process is it for the town to enact changes in zoning? So that, is this something that it makes sense to try and get it done all at once, because it's a real pain to go through the process? Or can we just keep tweaking it as we learn more?
Right.
Do you have an opinion about that? I mean, I think we can change our updated zoning law, add an amendment, done that.
Yeah, we've done it at real crucial moments because it is a process and you're spending a couple of months and putting out a public hearing. But so, you know, it is, if it's within months of getting a complete package, it's worth waiting for a complete package.
Sure.
And meanwhile, the only push on this is the developer who's expressed an interest in a project here in Dryden. And they, Ray, from your updates, they appear to be plugging along, but so far haven't come back to us and said you need to demonstrate that you're supportive of this.
They're proceeding with confidence that we're going to execute something within the next year.
Suppose one next step would be to share our recommendations with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, if you guys don't mind going through the paperwork, we certainly could wait for the code update.
I mean, the timing may be fairly close anyway, depending on how this goes, but.
The only downside of that is, as I pointed out, the solar law allows Best to tag along.
Right,
And we have no regulations whatsoever covering that. So
we do
right
need
now
to
there's
fix
no
that, yeah.
project knocking at the door to put in a combination solar Best project, but if there happens to be one, that might cause us to scramble as well.
Yeah, we could be in problem. Okay. All right, anything else on that?
Nope.
Okay. On to Brad. Co-housing?
No, co-housing will have to wait.
So we're
I-
skipping. Okay.
Yeah, I asked that that be postponed.
Okay.
I have I have an appointment tomorrow at Cantines Island, which is a co-housing community in Saugerties. And I'm going to check that out, meet the folks there, see how that works for them, get some insights. And I'd like to present that or put something together for the July regular meeting. Um, so yeah, I just focused on the manufactured mobile homes. If I could just, because I was driving earlier, can I just talk out of turn and go back to a couple things that were discussed earlier?
Sure.
The battery storage. I know we're working with that to figure out what's best for the town and zoning, of course, but I just wanted to kind of relate a story I'm following in the Hudson Valley at a vacated school, John Coleman. It was a Catholic school, and a national company or maybe international is coming in to propose a battery storage facility. And I sent some information, a link, I think, to you and uh, 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 Ray and Gina on that. And there's been a follow-up article on it where the public, it was a lengthy article as well, but there's a lot of concern that's happening. And I think it's a lot of it is certainly legitimate. So I'm following that. And, if there's interest, I can continue sharing with the board, just so we have, uh, more information rather than less. Um, that was it. So, on to the manufactured mobile homes. So I'm I was interested in looking at this as kind of a very narrow scope, just a part of what John and Nan and the ZAG group have been so diligently working on in a bigger picture sense. Um, and partly my time has doesn't allow me to be fully participating in that, my obligations, that is. But I was very interested in the manufactured mobile homes portion, and I wanted to present something that I think is maybe complementary. I know it's been addressed by the group, the zoning rewrite group. Um, but I've been involved with the a working group now for going on 3 years for the county for manufactured mobile homes, and we've done an awful lot of great work. I think Chuck Geisler, I think he may be attending here, has been part of that group, and so without further ado, I'm just going to jump into this, and I know it's a lot of words, so if you don't mind, and if it's okay with folks, I'm just going to read this. I think that way you can just you don't have to look at the verbiage. But this is a PDF that Gina can share later on. So manufactured mobile homes, there are distinctions that need to be made that have already been pointed out by Nan's good work in her phase one report. And the first slide that you're looking at there is pretty much straight from that. And I don't know that I need to read through it. You already have that information. So I think in the interest of time and focus, um, I'm just going to skip over that because that's pretty much something that's before everybody already. So, but I just want to preface this by saying, manufactured homes, are not very well understood. I think, I deal with them as part of my architectural, world. And they're of great interest. They're very, uh, they need to be distinguished from mobile homes, which is kind of an anachronistic term. But I'll just go into this. So starting on the second, if Gina, I don't know if you're operating that, but I'm just going to start reading on the second sheet, the second page. In New York State, the terms mobile home and manufactured home are often used interchangeably in both the electrical and residential codes. But there are distinctions that reflect both regulatory history and technical specifications. The key differences are the date of manufacture and standards. The main regulatory difference lies in the date of construction. Manufactured home, and this is something, by the way, we've been looking at a lot in the manufactured working group that we've been involved with. Manufactured home typically refers to homes built after June 15th, 1976, which is a pretty specific date, but that's when the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, standards came into effect. Mobile home, on the other hand, refers to homes built before that date and not constructed to HUD standards. However, in the electrical code, the terms are often used interchangeably unless specifically noted. Construction and certification. Manufactured homes are required to comply with the federal manufactured home construction and safety standards established by HUD. A manufacturer's label and a data plate must be affixed, certifying compliance when the unit is to be relocated. For mobile homes manufactured before that date, 1976, compliance may be demonstrated through inspection for structural soundness and freedom from system hazards instead of HUD certification. Next slide. Physical criteria. Both types are factory assembled, transportable in one or more sections, built on a permanent chassis, and can be used as dwellings with or without a permanent foundation. There are minimum size requirements, and this is also spelled out in our zoning code. 8-foot wide or 40-foot long in travel mode, or at least 320 square feet when erected on site. Both types are equipped with essential home systems: plumbing, heating, air conditioning, electrical. Code usage. For the purposes of New York State code enforcement, manufactured homes include structures that voluntarily certify to the HUD standards, even if they are smaller than the minimum size. Where not otherwise stated, the code may include manufactured homes in the definition of mobile homes, but exclude recreational vehicles and park trailers. Practical implications. When installing, relocating, or upgrading electrical or building systems, the label, certification, and date of manufacture will determine which set of standards apply. In real estate, lending, and insurance, a manufactured home typically has greater market acceptance due to compliance with HUD-issued standards. Next slide. Construction and code differences. Manufactured homes are built to more rigorous standards set by the federal government, which include criteria for construction, design, energy efficiency, and safety. Mobile homes, on the other hand, may not meet these same levels of performance or safety since they predate national regulation. In the context of energy codes for New York State, manufactured homes are recognized as a distinct building type, and when subject to energy conservation requirements, only homes that meet the manufactured definition are typically covered by these codes. Older mobile homes are generally not required to comply with the most current energy standards unless they undergo substantial renovations or additions. And that's its own subject that can be discussed in detail. Why does this matter? Compliance with the New York State Energy Conservation Construction Code, especially for energy upgrades or new installations, it's important to note that the classifications of one's home. Manufactured homes post 1976 will fall under more recent energy and safety requirements, while mobile homes may not unless they are brought up to current standards through renovations or other regulated action. I'm sorry, that sort of repeats what was said already. Next slide. So Here are just a few recommendations, starting with the definitions in our current zoning code. Dwelling, a house, apartment, and the suggested add is is in orange. Mobile home, manufactured house, or other place of residence. Just expanding that so it's more acceptable, more accepted, and from a a CEO building inspector's point of view, it's and for the planning board for that matter, it's memorialized. Manufactured home and manufactured park, insert under either definition or in the body and separately in the body of zoning regulations. The permitting and erection of a manufactured home can be for any resident, and this is where it gets a little interesting. Any residential district, RA, RR, NR, CV, VHR, VHD for Varna, from a single dwelling unit to multiple units based on zoning bulk and use table. This revised language is consistent with the New York State Executive Code, Article 21B, Title 2, Section 616, which we can all look up together or separately, and can equally be consistent with the preservation of rural character planning board recommendations. Mobile home, insert a mobile home is generally considered as fabricated pre-1976 and is not HUD certified. The distinction regarding federal law from manufactured home is described under the term definition above. So that memorializes that, because that's another, it's sort of another animal, so to speak. We've been working hard in our group to find, identify programs for energy upgrades, more energy efficient windows and systems, converting to electric, and other safety issues related to the mobile homes. Next slide. So a couple of graphs to start to finish this presentation off is, some of the work or the assessments we've been doing look at the number, just the quantity of mobile homes, for instance, in all of the county. But just noting that in Dryden, there are over 1,000, over 1,100 units, and that's about 28% of the county total just in Dryden. 1 in 5 of the within a mobile home park located mobile homes are pre-1976, and that's in the next graph. Sorry. The HUD certified, these homes and those separately assessed could be eligible for energy upgrades, something our group is looking at. Manufactured housing units cost roughly half of conventional stick-built construction. And this is something where the town of Dryden and the Affordable Housing Committee, in workforce housing committee can look at much more closely as a potential solution to our housing crisis, which is very real. Next slide. So this is just more data, but this is all town of Dryden. This is not the county. So now we're zooming in a little bit more, and folks are welcome to look at this in the PDFs that'll be circulated. But it shows us the parks, the communities that are just within the town of Dryden, and the TOV means town or village. The location of these 16 or so communities, and then the types of mobile or manufactured homes they have. One column shows how many are older than 1976. But it's a lot of homes. It's a lot of people that are living in this type of housing. So I think it's in our interest and in residents of Dryden's interest to that we pay attention to it, and find ways to increase the safety and recognition of manufactured homes in particular. since most of them are post 1976, and manufactured homes themselves could be, panelized. They could be, shipped out on a flatbed truck and erected on site, factory built and then site erected very quickly and efficiently with, cost savings. Next slide, please. Last slide. And this is just a tip of the cap to Chuck Geisler, who wrote has just recently written an excellent editorial. I think it'll be in this coming or an upcoming Tompkins Weekly edition. But I'll just read this, just one small excerpt. Affordable housing hidden in plain sight is the name of his editorial. The most affordable form of single-family housing in Tompkins County is manufactured homes. Manufactured homes cost just under half what site-built homes cost on a square foot basis. Why aren't we using them to solve our significant affordable housing problem? Across Tompkins County's 44 manufactured home communities, there are currently 246 vacant pads. Those pads are on lots owned by the MHC proprietor. In addition, there are vacant manufactured homes on other pads for assorted reasons. For example, few residents can afford the hefty $3,500 to $18,000 moving fee when they leave. So when they exit, they leave behind their largest single asset. So that's just part of the overall puzzle. But I do think just to wrap it up, sum it up, I think the zoning codes can open this up more for acceptance and even encouragement of manufactured homes that are less costly to build and built to today's standards in factories and then trucked out to sites and placed on foundations and so forth. It's a great way to encourage and advocate and actually support in zoning and planning this type of construction as opposed to more conventional stick-built and other types of traditional construction. So I think I'm glad that it's been tackled in the zoning rewrite, and I think it's a very important aspect of on a lot of levels for us to get this zoning right for the phase 1 and then into the phase 2. That's it. So thanks for giving me the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brett. Any questions for Brett? I think this is incorporated in phase 1. Yeah, this is all in phase 1, so this is all relevant.
Yeah, I did want to say one thing. Chuck, you sent us, I think it was just a long email where you talked about a lot of the stuff that we just heard. But one of the concerns that you expressed was that even though the state now requires, for example, that the manufactured homes be allowed any place where stick-built or modular single-family homes are allowed. And then there's a little wiggle words in there, something to the effect, as long as they're architecturally compatible with the stick-built and modular. And I think, Chuck, you were pointing out that some communities use that wiggle word thing relative to architectural compatibility to essentially make it impossible to have them be compatible. And I share, Chuck, your observation of that point, and I think certainly our intent that's not what we're trying to do here. That I think it's okay to have simple things like, I don't know, they need to have steps on the front porch, or obvious things like that. But certainly, I think here in Dryden, it would completely defeat our purpose to start establishing stringent architectural requirements that would cause these things to become a whole lot more expensive and difficult to deploy. We just need to be on the lookout for that. So, Chuck, when I read your email on the topic, I agreed with what you said.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
Please.
Thank you, John. Actually, I have no doubt that planning board, excuse my voice, I've got COVID and I'm kind of messed up here, but I do have some things I want to say. The point that you made is the least of my concerns, especially with this planning board and this town board. I don't think we're going to play those kinds of games and discriminate in that kind of way. I did send to Tony early this month an article by or my rendition of an article by a professor at the planning school at Cornell named George France. And I hope that gets distributed to all of you. I sent the link. The name of the article is Equity Zoning for Manufactured Housing. And it's really terrific. And in that email that I sent to Tony, I basically tried to attach it to our current zoning and mobile home laws such as they are. Second, I want to thank Brad for really digging in. And I think that mobile homes, manufactured homes, the whole subject has always been off-putting and difficult for zoning boards and planning boards. But the fact of the matter is, and one of Brad's points is there's been vast improvement in their structural integrity. And notwithstanding that, they remain half the price of average site-built, stick-built homes. And that's so significant as we search for ways in the town to figure out affordable housing. Brad's chart, the two charts combined indicate that we have probably 13 mobile home parks in the town of Dryden. Some of them are quite old. That's more mobile home communities than any other town in the county. The county currently has 44 mobile home communities and 1,722 manufactured units in those particular communities. There are others, a smaller number, that stand alone and are privately owned. In our town, I believe we have 12 mobile home communities, and as Brad's chart points out, 725 units on top of that. If you add the 399, almost 400 mobile homes that are separately assessed, that means they're not in a community, and this assessment office treats them as individual. Excuse me just a second. Yes. I'm sorry, I've got an emergency. Just hold on 1 second. I've asked him.
I'm not finding this email he's talking about. Tell him that.
I muted him, I don't know.
He said something 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Chuck did.
A link to George Franz's
Well, there
article.
was that, and then, but also he wrote a rather lengthy opinion on the topic.
Yeah, that was, I think, June 2nd. Did you not get it, Tony?
I'm looking for it. I'm not finding it.
I'll resend it. But let me just make a point that no one is making. And you've got to really listen to this. More than half of the mobile home parks communities in the county, 26 out of 44, are now owned by investor interests. I don't know what the ratio is in the town of Dryden, but here's the upshot of that information. It's one thing to have to try to formulate our zoning around these old-fashioned trailer parks and mobile home parks as we did in our initial zoning acts and their amendments. We kind of pushed them off to the side, and that was the way we dealt with them. Imagine now, and I'm quite certain that more than half of the town of Dryden's mobile home communities are now owned by investors, and our largest Cadillac mobile home community is up for sale and soon to be owned by an investor, Hillside Acres. So you are going to be dealing not with small fry interests that have a bunch of traditional mobile homes or manufactured homes. You're going to be dealing with big business who are going to throw their weight around. For instance, they will have, and it's in their business plan, it's all over the web. If you just go superficially into it, they can either continue the current business, tidy it up, use all kinds of verbiage that sound like affordability. And when there's a higher and better and more profitable use, you can bet that they're going to be coming to town boards and saying, hello, here we go. We would like to change this land use. And these babies are all over the town. So please prepare for that. Bottom line, it's wonderful that the planning board is taking manufactured housing seriously. And please keep it up and eyes wide open. Thank you.
Chuck, thank you very much for raising that important point. I neglected to mention that, but that's a key and central point, is what's happening with the mobile home parks and the corporations rather than residents having first dibs at purchasing and ownership. So that's a big item too. Thank you.
Chuck, this is John again. Chuck, I hear you loud and clear. And so this is a big challenge for the planning board, following the laws of Dryden and so forth, trying to influence what owners of private property can do with their property. And it would be really helpful to have examples of how the law would support a town entity interfering with a property owner's plan and desire, for example, to demolish a mobile home park or a manufactured home park and put condos in or whatever they want to do. Right now, I think the town is very limited in their ability to control things like that. And if there are examples around the country where communities have done that successfully, it would be helpful for us to see those. Because right now, again, if it came forward and wanted to do that, aside from, going through the typical processes we go through for any development, it would be hard for us to say, no, you need to keep those homes in place because the people who live there are dependent upon them. There's no legal rationale right now for us to do that, and that I'm aware of. And it would be helpful, show us the way that we do things like that.
Chuck, I think the state is actually looking into laws that assist renters and residents in thes communities. Does that sound right?
The state has 2 or 3 laws that are paper thin, and I think they're no match for what John just said. Market forces, absolutely above board, announced. They'll come to the town, and we will be trying to figure out, is there a moratorium solution where we can buy some time? Is there a set aside component that we could negotiate, not unlike what the county currently has through its IDA grants? I don't think there is in this case, by the way. I think it's a different animal. And then the whole experience of resident-owned communities rocks is pretty rocky right now. And it's very difficult, given the short amount of time, when a buyer announces and an owner, community mobile home community owner goes public with it, which they're required to law, unless there's some antecedent cooperative or entity in the area that can jump into action uh, and raise, say, 11 or 13 million dollars overnight. In the case of our lovely Varna example, which I never thought would change hands, et cetera, the coordination, the insurance policies. This is a really hard thing to solve. And so we've got to think through the zoning lens of if it goes forward and we can't do much change to these dynamics, what will we do with our zoning tools to prepare? And how will we, I mean, we're going to lose each time that happens a lot of affordable housing, natural affordable housing. It's a tough one. We got to work together on this.
Yeah.
And our group is trying to be proactive and put something real together in maybe with Ithaca Housing to and Cornell to figure something out, maybe find a patch of land. I mean, it's not addressing existing communities, but it's maybe having a prototype and you know, a way forward. So we're trying to do some big stuff. Separate from the planning board.
Right.
I sent Gina, I don't know if you're there. I sent you an example of a manufactured house. I don't know if it could be shared, but just to dispense with some you know, misconceptions or preconceptions about what manufactured housing is and can be. And you know, it could be indistinguishable from a stick-built house. You know, it's really just a different method of construction and a very efficient one is at that.
Brad. Whoa, I got connected here.
You're reverberating.
Brad, you can hear me now, right?
Yep.
I just want to make the distinction between manufactured house and a modular house or home in that case. And are you making that as clear because they come in at different price points and as
They're
I
different
understand
things.
it,
Yeah.
a modular home that would seem to be a modular home, not a manufactured home by definition, correct? What we're looking at right now?
Yeah, this was factory built and it was carted out, transported out on flatbed trucks and assembled in 2 days.
Two different things.
Yeah, that's a modular home
Correct.
That's a modular, right?
that we're looking at right now.
That is not a manufactured home. It's a modular home.
I mean, they're both manufactured, but this is a distinct type of manufactured home.
Yeah, it's just showing that factory built homes don't have to, you know, there's a very distinct separation between a mobile home and a modular or manufactured home. I consider those terms much more interchangeable than a mobile versus manufactured home.
They're very different.
They are very different. I mean, and the price point, you know, this one you're showing, that's not going to be cheap.
No, it's just an example from 1970. So it's just showing you that it's a factory built home can fit into a neighborhood, you know, whatever the neighborhood is. That's all. It's just an example.
Okay.
I would say we want to encourage, I mean, I think it's a priority for the town to have modular homes because of their affordability and they seem like you know, like a missed market for some reason, you know, why?
Well, modular can actually be quite expensive. Manufactured homes are quite inexpensive. We are going to have a presentation by a Buffalo-based planner that was in fact presented at the Cooperstown conference, and he's been working with the county of Herkimer or the town of Herkimer county And they are putting together plans for concepts for communities with a good number of a significant number of manufactured homes, and the price points are in fact much lower than conventional stick frame, and they're well built and energy efficient. So I would love to see something like that come to Dryden.
Our zoning doesn't say anything about whether it's a modular home or a stick-built home. And it doesn't need to. And then that's not what the point of getting rid of chapter 183 is. Chapter 183 is about a home that comes in on a steel chassis and it sits on the steel chassis, you pick it up and set it on a foundation. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about where the modules come in and sit on a concrete foundation and they look just like a stick-built home. They're two different things. And we need to be that, because I think there'll be people in the community who, when they find out that we want to allow manufactured homes to be located any place this home is built, they will object to that, say, I don't want a trailer next to my house. They're different things.
So we would, I presume we all agree in our definitions, we'll have a definition for each of these.
Absolutely.
Three,
And Ned gets
you know,
it.
This is,
So we're clear that there's a difference between a modular home and a manufactured home and a mobile home.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at my presentation, read through it, comment on it. It's really just to help, emphasize and supplement what John and the review group has been doing. So that was the key, as well as affordability angle, and trying to help us out of this, housing crisis as well. And so making it more acceptable in all of the residential districts. That was kind of the thrust of the presentation.
Right.
yeah, these were all topics that were part of phase one that was submitted and approved by the town board to go to Nan. And she's gonna provide us with updated definitions for these.
Right.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Right. Thanks, Brad, and Chuck both. There's some really good stuff here, and especially talking about I wasn't aware that so many of the manufactured home parks were getting purchased up by these developers. That's kind of scary. Yeah. But anyway.
Isn't that happening with traditional housing stock too?
Well, it's happening with traditional housing stock too.
Short-term rentals, that's a thing, but even
Yeah, and that's why.
houses.
Yeah, that's why we had to do the short-term rental law and everything. And actually, speaking of that, I think I shared it, that there was an article. I don't know if I sent it out. There's an article, there's a family that is trying to get a law passed in Massachusetts that requires any property used as a short-term rental to be inspected on a yearly basis. That it meets building codes, and it has to do with an incident that happened in Clinton, New York, where the house had a wood stove in it, and the house burned down, and the wife and one of the kids was killed in that fire, and the house had no working smoke detectors, and it's a short-term rental.
It's an SDR. Wow.
And the in this case, they're going after actually the owners of the property were not permitted like they were supposed to be. They said on the short-term rental listing site that the property had smoke detectors, and it did not, so they've been charged with manslaughter. And it's really kind of, so reading this article, understanding this story, I think it really was, really kind of scary stuff, that these things can happen, So what they're pushing for is a law in Massachusetts that says all short-term rentals need to be inspected for code compliance annually.
After they register.
That's absolutely right.
We only had a couple dozen
Yeah.
registered in this town, and we know.
And we
there
know
are a
there's
couple
more.
hundred.
And we've identified one, we know got a cease and desist, right? Because they violated our law. I don't know what happened with that one, but so yeah, it's really kind of interesting what can happen, but you're right, just general housing stock being bought up by. These corporate interests is really. Causing some issues, and I think even in our town, so anyway.
Ray, remember a couple of years ago, maybe it was that long ago, there was a company that offered for a price to look at the short-term rental websites, and they would be able to tell in our town where they all were.
Yeah.
And the county was pursuing it. Did that ever go anywhere?
The county has those records. They contracted with this third-party software, Granicus.
Yeah.
And so they get that data, but for some reason, the county cannot share that data with the local jurisdictions.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
this was by.
yeah, and that's
Attorney.
bullshit, really. I mean, we're paying for it.
Yeah.
So it would be good to look that up, and I think that would be a good starting point for the town to have a list of all the places that are out of compliance, and I would strongly object to the county not sharing that.
I can look into that.
Yeah.
We have a new attorney, so there's
Okay.
That would
possibilities
be
there.
interesting. Okay, moving on, planning department update.
So a couple of cases that came before the town board last week for public hearings. You saw the actions here at 1400 Dryden Road, the storage, and 2100 Dryden Road, the auto repair. Both applicants were no shows there. I think they're just evaluating their application to see if it is feasible to bring a hydrant into the storage. And if it's feasible to upgrade the road for the auto repair business.
It's a 2150, that's the 2150 property, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So they both have major issues. I'm not sure if they'll come back with solutions or not. But I just wanted you to know that happened at the town board last week. The Route 13 bridge, we're still trying to get a verdict on the 4 bids that came in, see if we can go ahead with those or not. It's in DOT's hands, and hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll have an either yes, we can, or we'll go out and rebid it. And then the PUD at the end of Cardinal Drive, that'll be returning next month. We saw that in December, I think. They've got some major issues and with transporting sewage through the town of Ithaca. A lot of the interceptors right in that Sapsucker Woods neighborhood are already full up. So that's the decision point at this point. But they want to come back with the revised concepts and get some more feedback from this board. They might actually present a septic and a public sewer plan and try and get, one of them advancing if they can't get the sewer approval. So that I would propose for the July agenda. And then just an update, since we're talking about the mobile home parks, the Hanshaw Village Mobile Home Park is still partnering with the town to do a CDBG grant this year to get a sewer extension out there going underneath Route 13 and up Hanshaw Road. That would be a Dryden asset, and then force main from within the park feeding up into that would be the mobile home park asset. That's still advancing, August deadline for that.
Are you planning to require water to go in too? Why not put both in?
We're trying to, both of them are major issues for that park. They're constantly under boil water orders. So we're trying to find some pot of money that might redo that system.
What does Bolton Point feel about the running water up that way?
Haven't really put that on their plate, but the lake is not gonna run out of water, I don't think.
Well, I was just thinking, if you're already directional drilling, you might as well put them both in there.
Well, exactly, that's why I'm trying to get that efficiency of, put casings underneath at least. But it may be just for financing reasons that they go in sequential years, but maybe we can get a casing put in at the same time we're drilling onto Route 13.
Any questions for Ray? Thank you. Town board update.
Ray just covered a couple things that we've been working on, so exciting movement on the Route 13 pedestrian bridge. I think whatever the outcome is, the town's gonna be in a good place in terms of working with the lowest bid, but we gotta wait for DOT to decide. And give us directions on what's acceptable in our region. I guess the interesting thing that I'll just say is it depends on what region you live in, what sort of guidance you get from the regional directors, and we love them all. I'm friends with the regional director, but you know, what they do in one region is not necessarily what they do in another. Similarly, I'm still pestering DOT about the Freeze Road Bridge, and I wrote to them last week at our consultants' suggestion that maybe the cage needed to be rattled a little, just to remind them that we're waiting for them to give us design approval to our consultants so they can move forward with design, and DOT apparently hasn't done that. They haven't heard back from their cultural resources people about something that they're hung up on, so it's in the bureaucratic web right now at DOT in terms of moving forward with the Freeze Road Bridge replacement project, and that's been a point of frustration. I'm kind of excited. I do a lot of interaction with the county through the Council of Government, and I think I've talked to you previously about ambulance service, and I had pushed to have them hire a consultant, Rochester-based consultant who does a lot of EMS reform work for different municipalities across the state. I met him through the Association of Towns, and he gave a presentation. You know, I made this referral and he came down and gave this presentation about how Tompkins might consider the efficiencies of owning and operating their own ambulances and taking some of the burden off municipalities like ours in particular, but also Trumansburg and Groton, and moving into some area that has long been, you know, the purview of Bang's ambulance. And you can imagine there was some tension about this issue. Some people, you know, don't want to see that competition, but I think that a fresh, unbiased analysis needs to be done in this county. Would this be better? Maybe it's not. Maybe we just keep what we have, but you know, right now, Bang's ambulance is taking certain calls and not taking other calls. The more mundane calls or the less profitable calls are falling to our people, our Dryden ambulance. Dryden ambulance sits outside of Ithaca High School games sometimes, and will provide services that typically Bangs would do if Bangs wasn't doing a transport up to Syracuse or Rochester, which pay better and more efficient. So I think there's a better model out there. I know there is because I've looked at other communities and talked a lot with this. So the good news is they hired it. They put the money in to hire this consultant. It's on a fast track process to have his analysis done. And I'm looking at this as an opportunity to save Dryden taxpayers some money. So we're not running our ambulances so much outside of our town. And you've all heard my message on that. That's just not, I mean, we're a generous town, but you know, I think we've been taken advantage of, and we've got to fix this situation. And the key is getting this moving this year before about almost half of the legislature is replaced. I think we've got 7 new members coming on to the county legislature, including our own Mike Lane, who's retiring. And I don't want to take this issue up again with a fresh slate of people who don't have a lot of background in this issue. So we're fortunate that the new county administrator really is interested in this topic. And I think you know, he's put, you know, some sort of push behind getting this resolved. So that's an exciting thing to be working on. And there's going to be some good news about Dryden Fiber very soon. I can't announce it because I haven't been given authority from the state yet, but I think we'll all be pleased in a couple of days when the state allows us to share some news. How's that for tease?
Yeah, that'll be good. I have fiber on my road now.
I don't, but good for you.
It's not spliced in. I can't use it.
Fiber, you have Dryden Fiber.
There's, yeah,
You have our
Dryden.
fiber.
well, I can't use it. They pulled the fiber in the conduits. It hasn't been spliced in yet. They're teasing me.
The program's very popular. I might say I drove a Dryden Fiber car, well, you know, my
Yeah.
car,
Yeah.
but dressed up as a Dryden Fiber advertisement. And I've never heard so much applause in a parade.
Yeah,
They weren't cheering for Dale
Yeah.
and the politician, they were cheering for Dryden Fiber. That, I'll take that.
that's yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Looking forward to it. But anyway. Is that it? Any questions for Dan? No? No, okay, thanks, Dan. Minutes approval from May 22nd. I did send out back, when did I send that out?
A few days ago,
What's that?
a few days ago,
The minutes, the revised
earlier this month,
earlier this month, yep.
Yeah, sorry, more than a few days ago.
Yep, more than a few days ago. I did send out some revised minutes because there were some significant issues. And I didn't want the draft minutes posted the way they were, so I did send it out. Any comments on the revised minutes? Does anybody remember them?
I just had one,
Did anyone read them? You have one thing, Brad?
one very minor typo, that's it. On page 5, interestingly, under the town website discussion. Rewrite is missing an R, a second R, that's all. Zoning re-white.
I got it, I will fix that right now, yep. Yep, I see it. Rewrite, okay, that's an easy fix.
Finally,
Comments on these minutes?
sound good.
Okay, somebody want to move to approve the minutes?
Move.
Okay, Brad. Second, Frank seconds. Any other discussion?
Bill.
What?
Bill second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah.
Frank's not here, sorry.
Thanks, Chris.
I do know your name.
I know,
I'm
I know.
sorry. Sorry about that. Bill seconds. Frank's not here. Any other discussion? Good, all in favor?
Alright,
Alright,
I'm assuming you're abstaining because
Abstain.
you were not there. Yeah, Chris abstains because he wasn't there, right? Okay. Got it. We don't need an executive session. I think that's it. Any other items anybody wants to talk about?
I just wanted to share some thoughts. I think I got this on. So I did see an expose or such as on the types of groups that are buying the mobile home parks. And it's huge business.
Oh.
It's a huge moneymaker.
Yep.
They come in, they buy those mobile homes and they might do some upgrades, but next thing you know, they're slowly upping the rent on these people. And a lot of these people are on fixed incomes, and if they can't afford it, it's all, well, they have to find someplace else to go.
And in
And
many
it's-
cases, they can't afford the, even if they can't afford the lot rent, if they're just renting a lot, they can't afford the lot rent. They can't afford to move the thing either.
Right. Then
So
just-
they end up selling it to the corporation who ends up renting it out or selling it.
Right.
Right, yeah.
It was a losing investment in trying to move them.
Yeah.
It cost $20,000 alone, so.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. It's gonna be something that I think we're really gonna need to pay attention to. Fortunately, it's in this phase, but I think it's a piece we need to.
And as far as modular goes, I lived in a modular home, my first home that I purchased. After I purchased it, I found out it was a modular home.
Mhm.
And I made no difference to me. It was well built.
Yeah, modular.
And that was back in 1990.
Yeah, it's very hard to tell the difference between a modular.
And I volunteer with Habitat for Humanity. And our latest project is down on Plain Street in Ithaca. And we built the foundation and did the sill. And 2 days later, they had a two-family home
Yeah.
in place that we're gonna be finishing up.
And they did a similar thing where they put over out on Slaterville Road, right, where they had a property, they put three I think they put 3 houses, they split it up, put 3 houses.
Yeah, they split the property up and then they restored the old farmhouse there.
But the 2 additional ones they put on were modulars, right?
I don't think so. I think those were
Oh,
still
were
built.
they stick built?
Yeah. So
Hard to
that-
tell, see, it's
but-
hard to tell.
but That's the direction that Habitat is going because it does save money.
Right.
I'd love to hear solutions to this,
Mhm.
I guess it's private equity buying up these
Yeah.
mobile home or manufactured home parks. And doing the various steps that you just talked about, driving up the lot rent until people have to sell their home that they can't move anyway. But if there's a community that's addressed this or solved it or come up with some sort of solution, I mean, we'd love to hear about it. Maybe that's something the housing committee can work on. Chuck, if you're still tuned in, try and find a best practice somewhere that we can check out.
Right.
I don't know what that would look like, rent control, do we, set aside some. Designate some land only for owner occupied. Manufactured home parks, something like, I don't know. Just-
Yeah, while we were sitting here, I Googled mobile home park investment groups. And there's a lot of ways for you to get involved if you want to.
Yep.
A lot of investment opportunities, but it's said.
Yeah. Okay. So we decided that the next special meeting, which was scheduled for July 3rd, we're gonna skip that one. We're gonna take a month off of the special zoning meetings.
And
in
you'll let
July.
everybody know.
Yes. I'll send an email to the whole SAG group to let them know. So we'll skip the July 3rd meeting. Everybody gets that one off. Beginning of a nice long weekend. Hopefully everybody has a good holiday weekend. Our next regular our next regular meeting is Thursday, July 24th. And our next scheduled ZAG meeting, zoning rewrite meeting, would be August 7th. And with that, I would say we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.